Hello, we are Group 6, and this is Ken Fortenberry. We have quite a few characters in our story, so we're going to start with Ken, and he's on the top left, and he's the main character, and then next to him is his wife Anna, and they have 3 kids, and then on the far right we have Sheriff Jimmy Gable, and he's the current sheriff, and then the two in the middle, Jack Cowan and George Reed, come up for election for the new sheriff later on in the story. After graduating from University of South Carolina, Ken had held several different positions at newspapers. Growing tired of the corporate rat race, Ken decided to pursue his dream of owning a newspaper. Soon after, Ken discovered an 80-year-old paper in South Carolina that was for sale. It wasn't until 2 months later when Ken could finally take over the paper in McCormick. Ken quickly discovered McCormick wasn't at all the town he thought it was. McCormick led the state in unemployment and illiteracy. It often had the lowest student test scores and lowest per capita income in South Carolina. It was Ken's impression that the city was full of drunks and bad check writers. Racist behaviors and attitudes were not uncommon in the town of McCormick. Ken decided he wanted to start writing real news stories rather than the chicken soup articles that had filled the newspaper previously. Ken started by going to the sheriff's office one day and asking for the daily arrest log and the sheriff's office financial records. The sheriff, Jimmy Gable, refused. The arrest log and sheriff's office financial record are both public record. Ken began to do his research as he felt something was not right. Ken uncovered several bad checks the sheriff had written on the office account to cover his personal financial obligations. Ken wrote a story with his findings. The story did not go over well for Ken. His kids started getting bullied and harassed at school. Eggs were thrown at his house, threatening phone calls were made, and the advertising revenue at the paper was declining. Sheriff Gable sparked a federal investigation. The night before Gable was indicted in federal court, a homemade bomb exploded outside Ken's house. The county coroner, Jack Cowan, took over as the interim sheriff. With the sheriff election coming up, Jack Cowan was trying to secure his job. George Reed was also running, and Jack Cowan was planning to bribe George Reed to drop out of the race. Ken learned the specifics of the sting operations and caught the money being handed over on film. After learning the specifics of the bribery incident, Ken published his story. The harassing phone calls and bullying continued. The election between Reed and Cowan was held despite the bribery charges. Reed won the election by 8 votes. After winning the election, Ken decided to check into Reed's past. It was hardly what he wanted to see. Reed had a criminal record and had failed the state-required written test for sheriffs twice. Ken suspected Reed was illiterate. Ken had the story about Reed ready for Thursday's Messenger. Knowing that the 2 stories prior did not go over well, what would you tell him? Should Ken expose the corruption of the newly elected sheriff, or should he leave town with his family and risk financial hardship? If he had called you and asked you for advice, what would you tell him?
Created using Powtoon.